There's a really famous song by Barbra Streisand, and it's called Where Is It Written? And I'm going to be reading you the lyrics of this song. So, um, it's called, these are the lyrics. There's not a morning I begin without 1,000 questions running through my mind. That I don't try to find the reason and the logic in the world that God designed. The reason why a bird was given wings, if not to fly and praise the sky with every song it sings. Which right or wrong, where I belong, within the scheme of things. And why have eyes that see and arms that reach, unless you're meant to know there's something more, if not to hunger for the meaning of it all, then tell me what a soul is for. Why have the wings unless you're meant to fly? And tell me, please, why have a mind if not to question why? And tell me where is it written what it is I'm meant to be? That I can't dare to have the chance to pick the fruit of every tree or have my share of every sweet imagined possibility. Just tell me where is it written? Tell me where. If I were only meant to tend the nest, then why does my imagination sail across the mountains and the seas beyond the make-believe of any fairy tale? Why have the thirst if not to drink the wine? And would it a waste to have a taste of things that can't be mine? And tell me where is it written what it is I'm meant to be? That I can't dare to see the meanings in the mornings that I see, or have my share of every sweet imagined possibility. Just tell me where is it written? Tell me where. Or is it written anywhere? Or if it's written anywhere. So I thought that I would read to you those lyrics because I think it really captures sort of the essence of the North Node in Gemini. And it also, overlaps because we are talking about, first of all, I just want to back up. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the North Node in Gemini and South Node in Sagittarius in the natal birth chart. I'm Everett Curdy. Welcome to my channel. I do videos on astrology and spirituality. So you can subscribe to my channel. You can like this video so it gets out to more people who would find this information interesting and beneficial. So, we're looking at this axis, this mutable axis of Gemini, the twins, and Sagittarius, the archer, the centaur. So in astrology, we're talking about signs 3 and 9. These signs are 6 signs apart. They're exactly opposite one another. So Gemini, is about communication, learning, socializing. It's a very mental, very curious, playful, childlike energy that can be witty. It always wants to pick up new information. It's always open to learning new things. And because it is symbolized by the twins, there is a duality to Gemini where it's about, seeing all the different sides of life. And you have a fork in the road and you have this thing over here and that thing over there. And so that also is an indicator that Gemini can get itself, away and in a tizzy of the multiple things that it's interested in and wants to do, where there's a lack of focus of direction. And with Gemini energy, there's all these little individual pieces of information. But where is the wisdom and the meaning in that information? That's Sagittarius energy. Because Sagittarius energy weaves all those threads together. It's exactly opposite. where what piece of information is really true for me, that feels right in my body. That's a huge Sagittarius question. It's all about new experiences, uncovering the meaning through experience as opposed to getting bogged down in the details in the information. Sagittarius is much more big picture, it's much more spiritual, more philosophical, and it comes to living a life that is in alignment with your truth and moving in a direction of freedom and joy and independence and taking the most advantage of your life. Um, Gemini is the short distance travel, or what's, in your community. Sagittarius is about traveling, meeting people from foreign cultures. It is about viewing the world from a much broader lens. So Gemini is the small little things, and Sagittarius is, if we could just zoom the the microfine glass out and we could see the world from a much broader lens, that's Sagittarius. So, we're looking at this axis, and in this case, we have the South Node in fire and the North Node in air. And I think that it's really, really important to know the element of your South Node and North Node because that can tell you quite a lot of information. So fire in astrology is really passionate, it's very enthusiastic, it's very exciting, it's very big. It needs things to light it up. It needs stimulation. It needs adventure, meaning, purpose, all those things to light it up. Otherwise, if you don't have enough to light a fire, it's just going to, die out on you. So fire is an incredibly passionate and alive element. And it needs a lot of energy, and it has a lot of energy. And then air is a very open element where it's about connecting with others. It's about communication, being open to learn new ideas, speaking. It deals with the mind, the intellect. So that's what we're dealing with is the North Node in air. So the basic premise of the lunar nodes is that they're 2 points that travel directly opposite each other. And so these 2 points are the sort of, it's like a fork in the road because we're talking about Gemini energy, but you're really meant to go down the 2 paths simultaneously. You go down this path over here for a little bit of time, and then you head down the other path. You're not meant to leave behind a certain path and only choose one path out of the 2 paths. So, one of the paths is the past, your comfort zone, what is already familiar to you. What have you come in that you know so innately well that you have mastered? That is what you revert back to in times of crisis or challenge, or what you already bring into this life that you don't even think about it. Yes, it's like you don't even think about it, and you're not so aware of it because you are it. There is someone that I was listening to who really has done a lot for the North Node and Aries, South Node and Libra transit, which is going on right now as I'm filming this video. Carly from Owning Authenticity, who has this metaphor of, I believe that she has like a fish out of water, that if I'm getting it correct, the fish is swimming in the water. And maybe when it hears about the water, it's confused. Well, the water is a huge part of it. It's just the environment that it is in that it is not always the most aware of because, you're so, enmeshed in that. The South Node can indicate a lot of gifts that you have to bring into the world. And you're coming in with a lot of talent, but how can you transcend and how can you grow and sort of teach that talent in a North Node way? There's something about that South Node that in this lifetime, you just feel a sense like it's just not enough. And there can be a lack of direction and purpose and even joy in your lives, where it just feels like the more you put into your South Node, it doesn't seem to be enough and fulfilling, and there's a part of you that wants something else, something more, and that is your North Node. So your North Node is your North Star. It is one extreme description of it is why you were put on this planet. That God or your higher power put you on this planet for a certain reason and for a certain purpose. And your soul was meant to move in the direction of your North Node while still taking the talents that you have that are South Node gifts. And then you can overlap it. And then you can move into your North Node when you recognize the South Node gifts and balance it out with that North Node energy. So the North Node isn't always the most comfortable. It isn't always the most familiar. It's new territory for you. But it's key for, learning and evolution in this lifetime to, move into, whatever your North Node is, sort of the skills that you have planned inadvertently to develop in this lifetime. So it's like, in this lifetime, you're going to school, and these are the things that you need to learn, and that is your North Node. So there's many different ways to think about it, and I think the school symbolism is so key because we are talking about Gemini energy here. So, delving into this particular placement, I know that was a long introduction. So the South Node in the sign of Sagittarius, the people who have this placement, personally, I know someone very, very well from a family point of view. My dad has this particular placement. So the South Node in Sagittarius. Sagittarius, as I said before, or maybe I didn't say this, can be a sign that is about truth, and it is about your truth. South Node and Sagittarius people, I think, come in with a strong sense of their own personal truth, that they know like the back of their hand, that they have spent lifetime after lifetime moving in a direction of their personal truth and finding what is true for them and living that kind of life. Where they were, trusting their intuition, trusting that inner guiding compass of what is right for them, because the high order of Sagittarius is that their spiritual sense of their life is very up in the charts. They have a strong sense of intuition and self-knowledge and wisdom. There are going to be some limitations with that wisdom, and I'm going to get into that. So the South Node in Sagittarius can be, dogmatic, defensive. In a conversation, when you're speaking and you're sharing, this is what I think, this is what I feel, these are my ideas. This is what I really have to share and what I have to say. Then could the South Node and Sagittarius person cut the other off? Could the South Node and Sagittarius person defend their point of view to the core, and know their own sense of truth and be so enmeshed in that truth that, this is the way that it is. This is, the right way, and there's nothing past this. And so when the South Node and Sagittarius people are in that mindset, that is not, that's not on path for them, necessarily speaking. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But another key aspect is something that really is a huge life area, because Sagittarius corresponds to the ninth house, which rules religion over religion, a certain faith that you blindly devote your life to. That there is this blind faith that you surrender and you want answers. Because one of the things about South Node and Sagittarius is they want something that they can rely on. They want a certain structured system. And it's easy to fall back on the God complex of wanting a savior or a teacher or a mentor. And I think that in previous lifetimes they've been in, if you have that, beliefs, I'm saying it just because that's a huge part of the South Node in Sagittarius, but another part of it is your early life. That there were these teachers that sort of taught the South Node in Sagittarius person to the point of indoctrination, perhaps, where they said, I'm the right ones for you. I have all the answers. I have what you need. And when that South Node and Sagittarius person went along with that, they were perhaps sorely disappointed. And it wasn't what they were looking for. There's certain maybe family traditions or customs that may have been true, especially when it comes to family traditions and family history, because that's also a small part of the South Node is family history. It can also lend itself to more ancestral, areas. But anyway, so with these religion, these are the rules, these are the commandments of God. This is what you should and shouldn't do. And there are these, rules, these kind of standards, and you're just, surrendering and blindly, not really lifting a finger and relaxing into this. While there may be a part of it that may not truly be right for you. And so it's going to be really, really key for me, moving into the North Node side later on. But we're talking about the Sagittarius. I find that when I do these videos, it's so easy to move into talk about the North Node and tie that in. I'm trying to keep those very separate. So, indoctrination into a certain religion or certain philosophy. Perhaps very, very philosophical, where this is the way that I live my life. This is my perspective. These are my beliefs. This is my outlook. One of the key images that I get for Sagittarius is someone who is very familiar with globe trekking, traveling around the globe, traveling to many, many different places, having the freedom, a wanderer, an adventurer, someone who went on perhaps religious pilgrimages. Like I think of those, religious pilgrimages, like, moving throughout the lands, and devoting yourself to something higher than yourself, to something of a more universal truth. And so that's another key here, is that wisdom. And there is a prioritization and an importance put on wisdom and universal truth above all else. So, these are the truths. These are the, the things that are actually going on in the laws of nature and all these kinds of things. However, there is an emptiness and there is a void in that universal truth and that wisdom where it's like sort of information that has been handed down generation after generation. This is the way it is. But now let's ask questions about it. And I think that for this particular placement, just to say, it is what it is. These are the rules. This is how it's done. All those kind of things. I don't know about that. I really, don't know about that because now, there is this opportunity with that North Node to move into some more nuance. So yeah, the South Node in Sagittarius really wants to be boundlessly free. Doesn't want to have gates, you know, around it. It does not want to be fenced in. It just wants to run wild in the fields and find boundless freedom and adventure. And so there is a tendency with the South Node to run away from sort of facing problems, sort of facing, the people in your world, having certain conversations with other people where connecting with other people and having those intellectual conversations was not necessarily something that was a huge area of focus, perhaps in previous lifetimes. And so when there is a disconnect, when you're feeling a certain way, it can be easy to sort of bottle those emotions inside. Because we are talking about the lunar nodes after all, not communicating necessarily your needs and feeling your feelings and perhaps putting a wall in place. Being closed off in a way where instead of, just connecting with somebody else, sharing what's on your mind, you just go off on your own, travel somewhere, go off to the next location, like I'm only here for so long, and you can't catch me, I'm going to go somewhere else now, and keep exploring something else. So that is one of the things where there is this sort of, you're sort of tapping your feet and you're sort of having ants in your pants and, moving about and waiting for the time when you can leave and move on that quest of freedom, and, personal truth. So, that's one of the things to look out for is that restlessness, for freedom where you're not really focusing on what's really right in front of you. So I spoke earlier about defensiveness in conversations with defending your truth, this is the way it is, and being argumentative when you're hearing something that you don't agree with or you don't buy or you don't like. And there is this sense of this person's opinion and what they have to say is beneath me. And why should I have to listen to them if they're not on the same level of knowledge and wisdom and expertise and truth that I am at? So there is this self-righteousness where I know so much, and why should I listen to this other person over here? And that mindset of knowing all and, not, it's really about humility. And, again, that mindset of just, being very defensive in those conversations with others and, perhaps cutting people off, not listening to their points of view and all those kind of things. It's really, really going to hold you back. That's, one of the shadows of Sagittarius is also a preachiness. We're telling people how to live their lives, how to, what they should believe, what they should do, their philosophies. And maybe you were projected onto in your early life, family, previous lifetimes, where you were programmed, conditioned, indoctrinated into a certain way of being, a certain set of beliefs. This is how it is. And then you project that on to other people, and you may not be aware of it when you project your life, your beliefs, your values without doing it in a kind and filtered, compassionate, understanding way, and without taking time and having a conversation where you're bouncing back and forth, seeing the other's point of view. So I think that really got to the core of this nodal position. There can be difficulties with socializing because of that self-righteous tendency. I think I should break down wisdom, and I'm taking this from the astrologer and psychotherapist Deborah Silverman, who has this breakdown of the word wisdom. Yes, you're smart. You have so much knowledge. You have the experience. You are very well versed in what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. You're very intelligent. Dumb. Oh, I don't know if I have all the answers. I think there's still a lot more for me to learn. And I'm actually never going to know all. And I'm actually a lifelong learner. And you know what? I never thought about that way of living. I never, that person and how they live is completely new to me. And while I may not agree with that, it's interesting to me. So, the dumb part of it is, I don't know, being receptive. And there is this realization that you can have where actually being dumb, in essence, asking questions, is actually quite an intelligent thing to do. Where, the dumb, perhaps, part of you is not knowing, not necessarily knowing, and continuing to learn, continuing to be the student of your life. Take on, or learn new information, cultivate that information, sort of put it into your, mental files and digest those pieces of information and download that into your own, already strong beliefs and philosophies and ways of being, and maybe combine and infuse what you're hearing and what you're learning into your own beliefs and ways of being, because Gemini really wants a lot of variety. It doesn't want one thing. It wants to sort of see other people's perspective. It wants to just sample the many different perspectives of people around the room. It's like if I was at a buffet and I'm sampling many different things at the buffet. So that's really a huge part of what you're meant to do in this lifetime. So losing the mindset of, oh, I have to be right. I just have to be right. I have to have the answers. I have to know all, because you may not know all. And it is okay to not always have the answers. And you're not going to know all. So I would stop expecting, yourself to know all. And so I think true wisdom is not thinking that you know everything that there is to know. Where you're very wise, but then where's the openness? Where's the receptivity? Where's the humility? So it's not the be all end all. It's not what is complete and only what there is. Maybe about a particular subject matter or area of life and way of being very well, and you've been practicing that, living that over and over and over again. But what about another way of being, another philosophy, another set of beliefs, and all those kinds of things like that? What about the values of other people? So those are the kinds of things that are really important to look at. There is this blunt and directness to a Sagittarius, because Sagittarius can also be very truth-telling, very blunt, very honest, very direct. That can be raw, but it can have no filter. So you say something, it's, blunt and honest, and then it offends or, hurts or rubs somebody the wrong way. And being mindful of communicating your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs in a productive, kind, constructive, practical way that is appropriate for the situation, that is appropriate for that conversation and interaction that you are having. One person asked the question, how should I, do this? And you have all these things to say, telling your truth, all this. And then it's not really giving people exactly what they're looking for, but actually tapping into that present moment energy, tuning into their mind, their psychology, also, what they want, tuning into the question, having that conversation, and giving, people what they want to hear, and doing it in a way which could be not so, maybe it's having conversations that aren't necessarily deep and meaningful and philosophical all the time, but maybe small talk, perhaps. And, you can sit with small talk. Where does that land for you? Um, um, and, have those small conversations, with others. Um, So you're used to sort of staring off into the horizon and asking the big questions, pondering the big questions, dropping down into that space of, wisdom, and wanting the truth, being a seeker of the truth, and all those kind of things. And in past lifetimes, you may also have been very philosophical. Love to travel, love to explore, have fun, travel around different cultures. And again, very big picture mindset. But then, what are all the different sort of pieces that you need to sort of look at? And that's basically your Gemini North Node. So, what will your life actually consist of in terms of what is intellectual? Whereas the intellectual substance and that spiritual wisdom, philosophy, all of that. And actually, it's diving into the details and all those kind of things, which will really give you the answers that you're looking for. So now we're looking at the North Node in Gemini. So Gemini is an open sign. It's a curious sign. It wants to learn new things. It wants to, again, pick up all these different perspectives and opinions, and read this book by this author, have these conversations, meet these people, collect this information, where you are just open, present, just learning the information in a way that is absolutely neutral, absolutely receptive, unbiased. See if you can just learn information without having a bias. And I think this is where it can be difficult for the Sagittarius South Node, Gemini North Node. As always, well, I don't agree with that. I don't like that. That's wrong because of this. It can be easy to fall back on your own truth and fall back on what you already know, and you hear a piece of information that may baffle you or may confuse you, or you may not be in agreement with it, or it's new, or it's unfamiliar, or it's not part of what you are accustomed to hearing and knowing. It is just different. And so without perhaps being very, up on your high horse and judging somebody for, their thoughts, beliefs, opinions, what they have to say, and all of that, it is actually about just being open in a non-judgmental curious, willing place to learn, and a humble place to learn, and gathering others' perspectives, and meditating on them and reflecting on them, and then also sharing your beliefs and perspectives. So it's sort of a ping pong game, or like you're playing tennis or ball, where you catch the ball and then you throw it to the person right across from you, and then they throw it back. So getting into the flow of interaction and the back and forth conversations that you could have with people is going to be a really huge skill for you. So unbiased curiosity, open-mindedness is going to be huge. And so listening to the perspectives of other people, and also not just jumping to a conclusion, jumping to because of the big picture perspective. And if I would continue, then there would only be so much substance that I would have to say. But it's really important for you to gather the facts and information before reaching a conclusion. Gathering the objective facts and information from the world around you, from the books, from the people, all those kinds of things. So looking at others' beliefs and philosophies and reflecting on those in comparison to your own, and how can they evolve your own beliefs and philosophies. This deals with tuning into the environment, not necessarily, oh, I want to go to this place, or I want to just escape and, travel somewhere else. But it is really about tuning into your community, your close circle of friends, your neighbors, your family, your friends, the books on your shelf, all of these little details in your life that can make up for the gaps that you've probably been feeling like, I'm just not getting the answers. I'm just not getting that truth and that sense of spiritual fulfillment that I want to. And maybe that's because you've been, way up here, and that you need to sort of sizzle down into, the little details and the small things to find the answer. Maybe climbing Mount Everest will not give you the answers that you're looking for. Maybe just in a park talking to somebody will give you more answers than you thought that you would ever get from traveling to this place, and continuing to shoot your arrow in another place, and going somewhere else and wanting the next best thing, and all those kinds of things like that, where there is this hunger to learn, hunger to explore, and you have the opportunity to do that in a more intellectual way, which is Gemini. So learning new things is also a huge part of this. Learning new things that you never knew before. Again, being open to learn new things. I never thought about it like that, or all that kind of thing. Really expanding your mind, opening your mind to new things. So taking in new information with openness and humility. You're also here to really engage in, writing, speaking, teaching, choosing careers that will sort of tailor you to those areas, those intellectual areas of communication, is, really, really important, in taking all the wisdom and knowledge that you have and teaching it on to others, and also learning from others. So it is the balance there. Because Sagittarius can be the one who embellishes, or the one who just teaches the information. But now it's time for you to learn, gather the facts, all those kind of things like that. So, having, again, healthy conversations where you're, one person speaking, the other is listening, without argumentation, without the two people cutting off. getting into the flow of conversations, holding space for the other person and what they have to say and what they think, and hearing their viewpoints. And with that comes a need to better pick up and be more tuned to social cues when people want to say something, when people are feeling a certain way or have something on their mind, or and the message that they're trying to say through the words that they are verbalizing. um and maybe coming back to the idea of religion and philosophy, that instead of getting caught in the need for certainty, that the blind faith of this is how it is, this is what I know, actually thinking for yourself and asking why, like exploring. Don't be afraid to ask questions, don't be afraid to put holes in the framework, to ask the question that people are not going to ask, to speak to the unspeakable, to ask a question to an almighty powerful system, and question it and explore it and learn about it. And then through that, you can see, is this truly right for you? Is this truly in alignment with your truth and your beliefs and personal spiritual values? And, when you can, open up to learning, then you can find those answers again. Um, so, um, yeah, so it is asking questions, and having a sort of detachment with not, being, oh, I need certainty. I've latched myself on to this, religion, and I can't let go of it because it's who I am, it's my truth. But it is just being open to question and ask questions and to explore that, and maybe choose an alternative path if it does not turn out to be right for you. Um, because you do have a strong sense of your own personal truth and a strong intuition of knowing what's right for you. But can you tie in the Gemini parts of that? So, another piece of this is just being present with your life, enjoying what you have and what there is in the present moment, not getting caught in getting the next best thing, but the people who are in your life and appreciating them for who they are. This can also be being present, having those conversations, living in your community, looking at the birds and the sunshine and all these kind of things, and really enjoying your life and making the most of it. And what can I do to explore, and what new thing can I learn? What's in my own backyard, and what's continuing to learn, because there is this understanding out there that you are a lifelong learner. Um, So it is, really opening up to that presence and what's available for you to learn in your environment. And so with Gemini, it's a really adaptable sign. It's a very malleable sort of chameleon-like sign, where it's not so stuck to a certain way of being. It's very adaptable, and it has a real knack for making the most of what's available to it, instead of just making the most of what's available to it in the present moment, exploring what there is to explore, using what you have, all those kind of things like that. So um, and then another thing with this is communicating your needs to another person is also huge here, because there is this wall, there is this sort of shutting down, not wanting to opening up, not necessarily wanting to have those conversations with another person, because it may be difficult to open up and communicate and be open about your thoughts and feelings. But this is going to be a huge skill in this lifetime to learn and integrate. is that this is, I need this freedom, or just being open, connecting with others is really what it comes down to, not cutting yourself off. So the final thing with this is there's a song that I actually came up with in honor of this North Node. It's available on my channel. Just type in the name of my channel and Malika's Hut. And I think that that song is so symbolic. And I have a description under the video of it about this globe trekker who arrives in somewhere in South Africa, and he gets to this hut where there is someone whose name is Malika, who who goes to this particular hut and is on a globe trekking journey. So the story goes. So exploring the mountains, the hills, the valleys, the oceans, all these kind of things, looking for answers. But then this person comes across a hut. And then there is this soul realization and this soul need to just stop in this person's tracks. And when this person stops and looks around to its environment, it takes time. This person takes time to reflect on what it's, where he has already been, what he has already explored, and tuning into the already present environment as opposed to continually traveling, moving somewhere else, searching and searching and searching, moving, continuing to travel somewhere else, go somewhere else. So then there's this hut, and then there's this Malika who comes out and, nurtures this person. This person puts his feet in water, probably gets like a massage or, those kind of things, sits down, has a conversation with this person, and finds a certain kind of meaning, special meaning from that experience. So I really thought that I would share that. I really hope that you enjoyed tuning into this video. I hope that you found it really informative, and I hope that, I wonder what you took away from this, what your thoughts are on it. I'd love for you to comment below. I hope that you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.